thank you all for joining first off, and thank you, Paul, as well as John, for this opportunity to present to this group. Appreciate it. My name is Dinesh Chandrasekhar. I'm a fractional CMO at Unstract, full disclaimer. And I actually have a different day job as well, so I'll explain that. But I've been helping Unstract with their marketing strategy, go-to-market strategy, and so forth. So I'm very much embedded with the team. And I want to present about, what they're doing and how they're helping what's going on around the Gen AI and LLM world. So first off, Unstract is a platform purpose-built for LLM-powered unstructured data extraction. I'll explain what that is. First, a little bit about me. I have been in the industry for around 30 years. I run a company called Stratola now. You can see the logo at the bottom. I'm a marketer / technologist / sales leader. I'm a fractional CMO at Unstract, as I said. I'm also an industry analyst covering the areas of data in motion, which is real-time data with AI and automation. So I'm kind of in the convergence of these three things, and which is why stuff like what John just said, kind of makes my ear perk and, go like, oh, this is really exciting and interesting. And I've been helping a lot of startups, help them with their go-to-market strategies. So if you have one of them, feel free to reach out to me. So let's get to the topic of the day, Unstract. What do they do and why Unstract, right? First off, let's talk about business processes. I've also been working with a couple of other clients, some of them in the banking space. And in banking, if you can imagine, if you're in the mortgage processing desk or if you're in insurance and if you're in the claims processing desk, each one of these clerks or each one of these processors, what they end up doing is they have this packet of documents scanned, maybe printed, maybe on screen, but still maybe a scanned document. And they have to go through these 70, 80 pages of documents or even more that contain a wealth of information. And that information needs to be transcribed into other system from where it triggers a workflow. And then the process continues for hours together. But there is a manual process involved where somebody needs to physically look through the documents and copy over information and so forth. Now, there have been tools that have evolved over the years, like robotic process automation tools and stuff like that, that actually help you with automation, help you kind of look in the right part and, get the data and put it in the right places and all that. But the reality is that none of these documents actually look the same way, right? Some of the scanned ones look tilted, they're badly scanned, they're in a different shape altogether. The forms don't look alike, the forms are mismatched, and they're in all different sequences and so forth. Makes it a really, really complex job for the person to actually look through it and do it, right? It's their job. I mean, they're able to do it, but if you were to automate it, it becomes even more of a hard job. So that's why there is a need for skilled or semi-skilled personnel to actually interpret the documents in order to do these business processes with humans in the loop. The trouble with the documents is manual extractions take way too much time. Mortgage processing, in the traditional sense, takes days sometimes because they have to go through all this, checks and balances and look through all this documents and extract all the data. Errors are introduced by humans in the loop, because of fatigue, because of repetitive processing of these documents. They might be looking in the wrong field, or they're interpreting a 6 as an 8 or something, could happen. And those kinds of errors are also introduced as a part of this process. And unstructured data is largely available for use in analytics because of this, because there is an insane amount of time that is spent in order for this data to be extracted and then eventually put into process. And by the time the data is actually made available, it's too late, right? So it's actually never quite immediately available. And again, time is of essence, right? So this all leads to a few things. One, slowdown business, brand value impact. So many manual reviews are being spent, which means that translates to cost. And then most of all, a subpar customer experience. If I were on the other side of the bank putting in this mortgage application, and the person says, "Oh, well, it'll take a week, for me to tell you anything," and if I don't have any clarity on the transparency of what's going on, that's going to lead to dissatisfaction from a customer perspective. So brief history of document extraction, right? So first, generation one, or the standard OCRs. I mean, this has been around for years, and I don't think I need to elaborate on the point that it extracts text from images and documents. You put in a scan, and it gets the text out. yeah, I mean, it's better than manual entry, but zero intelligence, right? So which means there is a physical scanning process, and then there is like text that is extracted out of it. Generation 2 is where we introduce machine learning, some level of like computer vision, some level of like, tolerance for change in form, like if the, text was like here versus here and all that, it's able to recognize those kinds of things. I think that was introduced definitely for sure. But what we are talking about, particularly with Unstract, is LLM based, right? And there are quite a few vendors in this space that are also doing this, but Unstract is very uniquely positioned, and I'll tell you why. But they use natural language to actually understand the context and extract the information. And you will see this in the demo that it's actually very innate, again, particularly for a case like Gen AI and LLMs that we are talking about. It makes it super easy for these kinds of toolings to actually understand what document it is, what kind of field we are talking about, how easy to extract it, and then put it in any format you want it as well, right? So that's kind of like how the ease of use thing works, which means the users then don't have to worry about what the input document structure needs to look like. You can say, well, how about co-pilots, right? So, we've all worked with like GPTs and things like that. So I'm like, okay, if I built a co-pilot, if I'm able to extract unstructured documents, if I use a co-pilot to say, same kind of prompting, right? What is the due balance on this particular credit card statement or something like that? You ask the co-pilot, it can probably get you an answer, right? But then it also leads to a person actually taking the data, again, putting that into the system and transferring it and kicking off the workflow and all that. What we are talking about here is a machine-to-machine workflow, because the existing one is like incomplete automation. What we are getting to, or with Unstract, is machine-to-machine workflow, right? So take the unstructured documents, run it through this machine-to-machine automation, where it automatically gets into the system through this workflow without or very minimal intervention by the human in the loop situation, right? If and only if it is needed, kind of a thing. Otherwise, this process can be completely automated, is where we are getting to. Particularly, you heard about the kinds of things that have been announced in the last several weeks of automation, as well as like unstructured. So many different announcements from so many different big vendors that are trying to tap into this space, because they all recognize, how much powerful it can be for overall business process automation. So let me introduce you to Unstract. Unstract, with Unstract, what you can do is you can ingest any number of large documents, right? And we are talking about like 100-page PDFs and things like that. It's very easy to like ingest any number of like large documents like that. You can convert unstructured documents to structured, like take stuff out of PDF and expose that as a JSON format. And I'm hoping most of you are like fairly technically versed. So if I get into a little bit of technicality, pull me back, and I can simplify it a little bit further as well. The platform leverages LLMs to actually understand these unstructured documents, right? That's the key part of this, or the USP of this whole thing. And it uses structured understanding to automate, the key business processes as well, whether it be like mortgage processing or insurance or whatever, right? And then doc extractions are done in real time, which is also a huge benefit, because then you get to like actually understand or put this unstructured data that you've extracted into the analytics part of the visualization as well. And because of leveraging this, and I'll get into like how we can reduce errors and hallucinations and all that kind of stuff as well, data extraction errors are like reduced or eliminated, right? So with that said, let me also like kind of show you a couple of visuals before I jump into the demo and actually show you the product as well, which is what this will look like. It's an open source, no code platform, right? There are two parts to it. Open source part, and I'll explain why in the next slide. The no code part is what you're looking at here, right? It's got a prompt studio that allows you to actually enter like, natural language prompts. You can look at a credit card statement and you can say, tell me or put all these cost entries, or the the dues on this particular credit card statement as in a JSON format or something like that, and it will automatically structure that as a JSON. Or if you want to extract a particular piece of information, like what is this particular customer's address, billing address, or something like that, and it can expose that. You can do transformations on the data and all that as well. So so many things that you can do without like writing any kind of code, just with natural language. And obviously that boosts productivity and all that. I'll save the marketing stuff for you, but you understand what it actually delivers, right? The second part of this is the open source thing that I was mentioning earlier, right? So LLM Whisperer is the underlying text extractor / OCR extractor, right? So that is what extracts the text from images and documents in a way that LLMs are best able to understand. This is kind of what I want to drive home. If you throw a PDF that contains like all different types of documents with all different types of formats and stuff with scanned driver's licenses and things like that, the way the platform does is, it can use one LLM to actually extract the data from a particular PDF or something, right? And it can also, you can choose another LLM to use that as a challenge tool and say, use this LLM to like validate what that other LLM did in order to like get that same data and see if they both match. If they don't both match, then it'll return a null rather than returning a hallucination kind of a value returned back. So this is a great way to like kind of do a checkpoint on the data that is being returned, because we are trying to like eliminate the humans in the loop, or like at least reduce them, so that the LLMs themselves like validate each other. So you could have like one GPT-4 like kind of like doing the first extraction, and then the challenger being like a Gemini or like Cloud or something, validating what that got extracted, and if they both match, then the results come out. So that's one way to like do that. The other thing is single pass extraction, which is a great thing when you have like multiple prompts, like as you saw on the earlier screen, that is extracting data out of a PDF. But if you want to like save on the tokens, and if you want to like save on the latency in terms of like running multiple passes, it can actually compact and construct a single prompt out of all the different prompts that you have, and do like one quick, go and get all the data that you need and output as JSON as well. So that's going to save you a ton in terms of like, token costs and all that as well, right? So that's another thing. So I'll get to like show you all of this, in the tool itself. It's a tech agnostic platform. You get to choose whatever LLMs you want. You get to choose whatever vector databases you want to use underneath, the embeddings that you choose. The text extractors even, I mean, we provide something like super unique and powerful with Unstract. But if you want to use a third-party text extractor that you're comfortable with, you can use that as well. So it's absolutely tech agnostic, that you can figure out what works for you, and you can choose that for your needs. And some of the things that you can get out of this is like, you'll see the document, in one hand, and then you can also see it preserves the layout. It has a layout preservation mode, which is very, very powerful, where it can actually show you exactly how it was laid out in the PDF in pure raw text format. That's again great for LLMs to actually read. It can also do auto mode switching between like OCR and text modes as well, based on what the input is. If it's an image, then it'll go OCR versus like, the other way. The best thing is also checkboxes. The more you get into the space and validating or like evaluating some of these tools, you'll realize that some of these tools are like challenged when it comes to like, reading checkboxes, radio buttons, tables that span across like multiple pages and things like that. Huge challenge. And, Unstruct is quite well versed with dealing with all of that. You can also expose that whatever you built as a workflow into an API, which you can then consume within your GenAI application as well. And this is a very powerful thing, because we can be completely under the hood. You could be building the next gen GenAI application, which requires you to probably process some of this unstructured data and all that. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can leverage Unstract under the hood, leverage the API capability, and you can build all of this stuff very, very easily with this Prompt Studio, and use that API within your application and do that as well. Or if you're looking for like, let's say, an unstructured, data ETL pipeline, so be it, right? Take data from like a file dump, where you have all these different PDFs, scan all the PDFs, extract all the information, put that into a data warehouse. You can do that as well, right? And then, there's a whole line of conversation about RAG and, building on RAG pipelines and all that as well. I'll save it for a different day. So I'll leave the screen for a quick second. If you want to like, take a screenshot or a picture or something, if you want to try Unstract, there's a trial that is available. I tried it myself. I'm a techie at heart, but at the same time, this doesn't require like technical skills. It's very easy. Sign up with your Google account. You are immediately in the tool, and you can just drag and drop a PDF document into it, upload a PDF document into it, and immediately start getting responses from that. So with that said, let's show the tool. So this is the Prompt Studio that I was telling you earlier, right? So before I get into the actual capabilities itself, let me just show you from a settings perspective. You can go in and select whichever LLM you want, right? So that's again, the flexibility that I was explaining to you earlier. If you want a new LLM profile, you go in and add whatever LLM profile you want. Same thing with vector DBs. It has the ability to like connect with like a whole range of vector DBs that you can add on to it, embedding and text extractors, everything, right? So it's all flexible. You can go in and select whatever you want and set it up. Very easy to do that. Once you do that, you can come to the prompt studio section and you can set up a prompt. So there are a few things for demo purposes I have it set up. Let me start with the credit card statement parser, right? So I have 3 different types of credit card statements in this example. So one is Bank of America, which you can see. It has like, some initial text here, account summary and all this stuff. There are some transactions that are starting. And then there's a whole lot of like, legalese and marketing stuff that is like, embedded there that is not needed at all. And then you have, again, transactions, broken into this page. And then there's some balances and things like that, right? So this is one format of a Bank of America statement, right? Imagine putting this LLM or this PDF as it is to an LLM, right? So all this text is unnecessary. You don't need all this stuff. But if you send this PDF as is, you're going to like, incur token costs because the PDF like size is like so much and all that. Instead, if you were to like get probably just like a raw view of this, you can actually get like an exact text representation of the whole thing, right? So you can do this. Now, it also comes with all the text that is like unnecessary as well, right? So, but it's very readable for an LLM. But in case you just wanted the real fields that are important for you, minus all the legalese and the marketing text and all that, you have the summary view, which gives you just the fields that you require, right? So the issuer name, customer name, address, payment info, all the different line items in the credit card, everything, just this alone is what you get out of that PDF, right? I'll tell you how we got it. But before I show you that, I'll also show you the couple of other statements here. So this is United Mileage Plus credit card. Again, all these are like process, so it's not like really real, so don't worry about it. No PII being exposed here. But you see the accounts activity starts in a different place. It's called account activity compared to the other one where it was called transactions. And there is again like more legally stuff and all that stuff, and more transactions. And these transactions go into like 2 different lines. One says foreign transaction fee, the other one is this and all that. So there is like different ways of how it is being processed. And the last one, is one from American Express, which again has like lots of tables, this kind of legally stuff, and then some summary information, and then the transactions itself, right? So very, very, very different formats. But I can use the same set of prompts for all these 3 PDFs and get the same results very, very effectively. So how am I setting up these prompts here? So if you look at this, issuer name, and the prompt is like, what is the name of the issuer or the bank who has issued the credit card, right? And I'm saying I'm not interested in the legal entity, but the primary brand name of the credit card. So that's one way to say it. Or the customer name. What is the name of the customer to whom this credit card statement belongs to? Very simple English is all I'm asking, right? So, and I get the response, in this case, it's like American Express. In this case, it's Joseph Paulson. As you can see, that's the name of the customer here and all that. And then you can also specify what kind of response you want it as. You want it as text, number, email, date, Boolean, JSON, whatever, right? So in this case, these are all text. But what if I want let's say the transactions or the address, for example, in a JSON format? So here I'm saying for the customer's address, form a simple JSON object with the following fields. Full address should have the customer's full address. City should hold the city's name from the address. Zip should contain the zip alone, right? And then I'm saying it's JSON. And if you look at an actual response itself, and I can show you the view in the combined output, which is going to tell you what the JSON looks like and all that. Here you can see the full address, customer address, city, full address, zip, and everything in JSON format. And then the spend line items, the transactions also in JSON format. All this is again plain English that I asked for it, and it came out like that. The other thing I want to point out here is I'm actually previewing the output of 3 different LLMs right here, GPT-4, Gemini, and Claude in the same way. What it's showing me is to execute this particular prompt, the number of tokens it's going to consume for this particular GPT or this particular LLM, the time it's going to take, well, obviously after the execution, and then the cost of how much it's going to take, right? So for this one, it's like, 5 cents, 5 cents almost, and then it's like, 4 cents. Right? So maybe Claude is a better one compare from a cost perspective where it might be cheaper to like execute all this is. So I might use Claude as the default one to like, doing all the stuff as well, right? So that's the best part. So net, what you're getting to see is, an ability to do text extraction from like 3 different types of credit card files, but you get exactly the same output and the same set of prompts work for all of them as well, right? So if I just move between the documents, you'll actually see that the prompt values, here it's a Chase document or like Martin Cooper Harrison, who's like the name of the customer and all that. I'm like seeing like different things repeatedly, Bank of America, and then, the name of the customer here. Everything is like changing based on whichever it is. So the same prompts work, for all of that. The other thing I want to show here is setting up an easy workflow out of this. So if I go into workflows, I can create a brand new workflow. Let's say I call it a credit card parser API, because that's what I want to set up. And in here, I can choose the API, and I can search for whatever parser that I just created. Like this was the one that I was playing with, right? So I can drag and drop in here and put that in there and choose API as well, right? So now that I've done this, I can now deploy this as an API real quickly. And I tried this before, so it's like autofilling for me. So I can just add an API deployment. So it says new API created successfully, right? So now if I go into API deployment, you'll see that the API is out there. And all that I need to do is download a Postman collection, right? And immediately it'll download that to my computer, and I can use that within my application that I'm building, or use Postman to like actually call the API and all that. I'll save that for this demo, but that's practically what you can do, right? But if I go into the same workflow scenario here, and let's say if I want to create a brand new workflow, and instead of choosing API, I choose file system, right? I can practically point it to like Dropbox or someplace like that, where I have like a ton of PDF set up, and I can like scour through that and get all the different files from it to process. And instead of like choosing, API on this side, I can practically choose a database, right? So I can put the output of this credit card statement that I've been getting into like a Snowflake or something like that as well, right? So very easy to like process files. Like this practically becomes your ETL pipeline. That's what it is, right? So earlier I showed you API deployment, and here it is this. Last thing I want to show you is, I showed you like how you can do credit card statements, right? So let's say this.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
How good is it at dealing with, images and handwritten stuff, and
I'm going exactly there. I read your question right there. I'm going exactly there. So first one is an electronics scan form. So this is a form that was like an electronic filled out. There's like a PDF that I'm looking at it. I'm looking at like checkboxes here, right? So U.S. citizen, permanent resident, non-permanent resident, alien, and all that. So my question is, what is the citizenship status of the applicant? Respond with one of the following: U.S. citizen, PR alien, or non-PR alien, right? That's all I've given it. And it's able to detect the checkbox, and it's able to tell me it's US citizen, right? So it's able to read checkboxes very, very well. Same thing with like marital status and all that, you can do all of that. So very easy to make it do that. Now, take your question, for example, with a handwritten form, the same form, if it was handwritten. So in this case, you can see if I should try my handwriting, it's actually really bad. And, it actually can process the handwritten things as well. But the best part is, again, the same checkboxes are now in a handwritten tick mark, right? So I'm like, this is what it's being processed. Is the credit being applied for individual credit or joint credit? Respond with one of the following. It is able to read this, and it's able to see the check mark here, and it's able to tell that it's applying for individual, right? So it actually can read all of this. And if you look at the raw view, the same handwritten stuff is now translated into like proper text right there, right? So all of that stuff that was entered here, like if you look at the current address and all that stuff, you can see that, the current address is all written right there, 124 Sullivan and all that stuff, it's written there. And you can also do the summary view. In this case, we didn't create a summary view, we didn't index the document, but, you could create a summary view of that as well. That's also possible. The combined output, again, same thing in a JSON format. If you want that, you can see that as well, right? The last thing, which again was also something that blows my mind, is images. So captured receipt, right? In this case, this is a a restaurant receipt, right? So somebody scanned a receipt, and you can see that Jack the Ripper, plain fries, Coke, all this was like kind of the order, right? And somebody had ordered all this stuff. The questions are, what is the name of the merchant or vendor? It's able to detect the name of the vendor and all that. But that's not, the cool part. The cool part is, it is also able to this one, respond with a JSON object of the following format of the line items in the receipt: item name, quantity, and subtotal amount, right? So you look at the combined output, it can actually show you item name is Jack the Ripper, quantity 1, subtotal amount is this. Item name is plain fries plus Coke, quantity 1, subtotal amount is 130. It's actually able to read 400 and 130 in spite of it being like a multiple lines and stuff. It is able to read that, and it's able to detect that, right? I can actually even add one more here. Like, for example, and I'll show you a live prompt. I'll add a new prompt here. Oops. So I'll name this prompt as get city, right? So I want to just get the city of this particular thing, right? And what I'm going to enter is what is the vendor's city. Maybe I'll just keep it simple. Let me try. And I'll just run it. And Claude instantly came back with like Bangalore. It is able to detect that the vendor is in Bangalore, and GPT-4 also came back with Bangalore, right? So it's also again telling me the cost for executing this prompt with Claude versus like GPT and all that stuff. You saw me literally like type this prompt up, right? I didn't even like write any code or anything. I literally added a prompt and I said like, tell me what this is. And it's able to like look at the scanned image, and it's able to read what the context of the image is. It doesn't even know what this thing is, but it's able to process, here is what this receipt looks like, and here's the city, and it's able to get Bangalore out of this, right? So that's the kind of power this tool has. So I'm just saying that most of the people that I've shown this to, they try it out using the trial, and they become believers the moment they throw their own custom PDF in it and start asking questions. It doesn't require like any kind of training and this and that. It works that well, so.
Hey, Dinesh,
Yeah.
can I ask you one other question? If I eyeballed it right, the Claude cost is about 1/30th the cost of the GPT-4 for that same. Do you see that kind of variance for similar transactions a lot?
It's again a matter of like LLM economics at this point. I don't think there is a clear way to like say why versus this. As you can see on a week by week basis, people are like dropping the rates at which or the tokenization amounts that they're allowing and all that. Everything is like changing on a week by week basis. So I don't think I can like tell you exactly as to why that is like happening. But one of the things that I will tell you guarantee is if you use things like summarized extractions and things like that I showed you and talked to you about, those are the things that will save you, because of like you having to send this massive PDF, but you are actually extracting the real wanted information out of that and sending only that to the LLM. Makes it like twofold. One, from a cost saving perspective. Two, makes LLM actually understand your data from that PDF very, very clearly, right? So that's what makes it super
But I
powerful.
thought you were using the LLM to create the summary view. You're not?
Yes and no, right? So the summary view actually is powered by the extractor itself, right? So the extractor gets all the information from the document or the image, and then it puts that into the summary view, right? So that's what it does. The LLM is actually the prompt studio. That is the one that is allowing you to ask the questions and get whatever responses you want and all that. So here I'm choosing like this is the default, right? So GPT Turbo is the default. That's what I'm using for like getting all the stuff. the challenge manager, which I showed you or like told you earlier, I can actually set up like a anti, LLM to like verify this, right? So GPT-4 came back with like a response. I can use Claude to actually like validate it and say, hey, you also check it. And if you also verify it to be the same response, so be it. If not, that's a hallucination. I don't want to do that. So you can enable a challenge as well. You can specify what kind of summary manager you want to use, right? So which is the LLM profile that you want to use for summarization and all that stuff. So anyway, I'll stop. I know I'm up on time, but if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So, and I'm going to be a little. I'm not trying to be snarky, but I've used text tools for a long time, and I could do this with my eyes closed 5 years ago without an LLM. Everything you showed. So, just saying I've done it. I'm trying to understand. I mean, it's not as nice. Okay, having the nice little ability to use the LLMs and the wrappers around them, that's all very nice. I'm just trying to figure out what is special about this, because AWS Textract, for instance, did exactly this many years ago. It would give you JSON output. It would get all the stuff right. What I'd like to see actually is some really smudgy, ugly handwriting, and see if it does better at that, because that's tougher.
Yeah, I wish I had that example. I'll definitely show you that. That's exactly why I'm saying try it before we get snarky about it. The reason is
what's special about. So are you just literally passing the prompt to the LLM and saying to the LLM, what I'm trying to figure out what's special about this.
The special part is the extraction itself, right? So first off, what it has been able to do that some of the other tools, including the tools that were like built several years ago, was not possible, are things like checkboxes. I guarantee you, even today, there are tools that struggle with checkboxes. The other thing is tables that span across multiple pages. These kinds of constructs are not easy. The ability to read those tables, read which is the transaction and all that. Don't take my word for it. There is a video that Santiago Valderrama, who's like one of the top class AI influencers, he posted a video literally like a week or two ago, last week, I think, about this kind of text-based extraction. He actually showcases how GPT-4 reads a particular scan document and how, the LLM Whisperer, the text extractor under, Unstract does it. This difference is night and day, right? So I know that's why I said there are multiple tools out there. It is not about every tool can do it. It is about like what this tool actually differentiates itself with. Try it to actually see those kinds of special cases, which is more common in these kinds of use cases like insurance processing or mortgage processing, things like that, where you will see these kinds of unique document constructs.
Okay.
Lucinda, you had a question.
I think Mike is now before me.
I'm sorry?
Thanks, Lucinda. I'll make it quick. So yeah, this is great. My question has to do with permissions. If I'm dealing with forms, financial data, personal information, does it have the capability to obfuscate or blur out information that I logged in as Michael Novak, junior #1 level guy versus king of all Siam, John Svolka? Does it know how to present that data to me?
Yes. So there is text-based understanding of PII information, and also protection against like specific roles of like whom to show and whom not to show and all that. There is capability within the product that is available.
This is, pretty cool, actually. I'm looking at a project that probably this would be really relevant to. So just a few questions, like, can it do alignment of answers to free text? Because sometimes you might have like a survey, right, where people are saying yes or no, or 1 to 5, etc. And then there's comments. And so if somebody's rated low, but the comments don't address it, then that could be a problem. So I was just wondering, can this system do that, or does that you then take whatever output from the system is, and then you have to build your own code around that?
I haven't tried it, but I would be surprised if it doesn't like do that. So I'm going to take this as a pet project myself, like later this afternoon, and try it out. But that's a very good question. I haven't tried it to, answer your question, but I don't see why not though. If it can like read like really complex documents like this, it should be able to understand that. But let me try it out before I tell you that. Hit me up with a note or something. I can definitely respond back to you.
Okay. And then like just error rates, validation, etc. Like what are the rates of error and how do you validate?
So the LLM challenge is one way to like avoid those kinds of errors, right?
Yep.
So if, for example, a particular LLM that you choose as the default one understands the data to be something, and then the challenge LLM says, no, I actually read it as something else, it'll actually return a null rather than saying, this is what we think it is, right? So instead of like hallucinating or like, giving you erroneous data, it'll actually give you a null. So you can actually put in those kinds of checks and balances saying if you return a null, then trigger a workflow or like,
It flags a
use this default
human or
value
something.
and things like that.
Okay. All right, thanks. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So I had one last question. From a management perspective, everyone on this call is using it. Is there a way for me to go in and audit how it's being used to try and optimize it, or see how my people are using it, if they're using it correctly, incorrectly? And what John talked about before, if I want to look at the end of the month, how much did I spend on Claude versus Open AI? Can I look at some sort of dashboard that says, yes, this is what the sum total was?
I believe they're having it in the roadmap from what I understand. I don't think there is that kind of capability right now, like a dashboard that shows you like the total cost spent or something like that. I could be wrong. Again, my limited CMO perspective into the whole thing is what I have. But I know that they've been building a whole lot of like, roadmap features into the product as we speak. So I'm sure there is a dashboard like that is coming about that tells you who's using what and how much and all that. See, one of the big things about this is like the hidden cost of, LLMs and Gen AI applications. Nobody like seems to understand it. And that's, again, a big fuzzball for like a lot of people that not wanting to adopt Gen AI projects because they don't know what the hidden cost is. And with clarity like this, you can actually get that saying, okay, I know I'm going to spend so much if I do this for like 600,000 documents that I'm going to execute over the next 3 months or something like that.
Great. Let's go ahead and unless there are any urgent questions, we've got about 5 minutes for open mic here. Thanks, Dinesh. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you all for the great questions.
All righty.
I will share my email here in the chat, and if you feel like asking me a question, let me know.
All right. Anything interesting going on for folks, or anything that folks want the view of the group to help with?
Well, I'm just wondering if anybody's been using the LLMs with JSON outputs and how well that works, how reliable that is.
Are you going to make me talk again?
Yes, go for it.
And I need to hear it from others as well, and I definitely would love to hear that.
So Lucinda, since OpenAI did the structured outputs, it's been pretty good. It guarantees that you'll get the JSON.
Yeah.
Have you been having issues?
No, but I haven't put stuff into production. I found it to be pretty good. You can put JSON into it and say, I want this, this, and this. You can get JSON out of it. That seems to be pretty good. What's your flow downstream from the JSON?
So in the agents, you do the structured outputs, you get the JSON, and then you're guaranteed that you can nicely pass them and do what you want to do.
Right, but then you could just put it into like a data frame in Python and stuff, or?
Yeah, and it's sort of like pretty much guarantees. You can expect certain elements to be there, and that was the biggest thing. It just gives predictability, because otherwise you had to write a lot of code to protect yourself against crap being said by the AI.
Right. And then do you use different models Have you found any particular models are better at outputting JSON? Because I probably think Claude does too, right?
Yeah, we just use OpenAI.
You're right, guy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm a use case and business guy rather than the actual, you know, as, as long as I can duct tape things together and get my work done, I don't care who the underlying model is.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I used this is Tim. I used OpenAI for JSON just anecdotally, so I don't have a ton of experience, but I had no problem with it. I used it for saving diagrams. You know, when I had text and diagrammatic forms and I wanted to be able to save them and then read them off the disk simply. And I said, well, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I had to flatten out the whole network structure and everything. So I just said, well, okay. They just gotten this JSON thing. So I said, well, I'll just stuff it into a bunch of JSON. And you know what? It did it perfectly.
Nice.
And read and wrote the documents perfectly.
So Dinesh, a question for you, like, is Unstract same as unstructured.io?
No, two different companies
Yeah.
compete against each other.
Okay.
The similar sounding names.
So
All right,
Dinesh, how do we go
so-
about trialing this if we're interested?
What about the functionality? Is it the same?
No, unstructured, you know, I think offers a bit more than what Unstract is. Unstract is like very unique and focused on what we offer. You know, again, as I said, it could be the backbone for your GenAI application. You said you use OpenAI for like, you know, doing this, right? Again, if you have a purpose that where OpenAI alone fits in, and if you're like wanting to locked into OpenAI, so be it, bless you, you know, use it, right? But then there are companies that don't want to be locked into a particular vendor like OpenAI, particularly with what happened like last year with the Sam Altman-Worcester and all that. People really got jittery about like, you know, am I locked into the ecosystem that's going to crash, right? So you want that flexibility, which is what Unstract has been offering, you know, where you can switch different types of LLMs behind the scenes and all that. The second thing is, you know, that video that I was talking to you about, I pasted the link in there. Just watch that. You will see how limited GPT-4 is when it comes to like, you know, processing PDFs and how Unstract, you know, does it better, right? So that's, again, one way to like look at it. The last thing I would say is the cost angle, right? We spoke about it. If you are, you know, monitoring costs, you wouldn't be in a position to say, I don't care as long as the job gets done, you know, I'll deal with OpenAI is not a position that you can afford to take, because over the long run, it could definitely be very, very expensive for the organization. So then that means, you know, you need to be monitoring this, as I think me was asking, you know, do I have a dashboard where I can look at like the cost comparisons over the last few months or like, you know, in the next few months and tell me like, you know, which is a better LLM to use, right? And this is happening as we speak on a week by week basis. The costs are like dropping down. The economics is like changing. And we need to be, you know, aware of that if we are in the space of like building Gen AI applications.
Yes. Yeah, I know we're at time. I just have one question for the group. Does anybody, to what Dinesh is saying, we're seeing a similar thing. Is anybody know of a total cost of ownership study or good data other than to take materials from, you know, different vendors and put it all together? Because there's so much volatility in actual realized price.
I would love to write one with you if you are interested.
Oh, we're looking into it. All righty. Well, thanks, everybody. Here we are, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock East Coast time. Hope you got good value for your evening hour. It's great to have you all here and look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye-bye now.
Feedback. Thank you, guys.